Hey, MBA hopefuls, we are on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more great MBA Waves content. I know everyone's been talking about the solar eclipse, but today on episode number 134, we are going to get into what exactly is AIGAC, I can't even pronounce it, and why you should care, to give you a bunch of resources and tell you about what's paid and what's free here available to you as an MBA hopeful, and to hear about some inspiring success stories that we AIGAC consultants have had with our clients. So as always, I'm your host, Eric Lucrezia, joined by my co-hosts, Krithika Srinivasan and Bara Sapir. How you doing, guys?
Hey, good to see you.
You too. And this week we have the pleasure of hosting three fellow AIGAC colleagues. So all of us in the room today are AIGAC members. We'll explain all this in just a second. We have, in no particular order, Candy Lee LaBalle of LaBalle Admissions, Paulo Oliveira of Philadelphia Consulting, and Laura Nelson of LE Nelson Consulting. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Good to be here.
So all you guys are quite active AIGAC members. Some of you have been around longer than others. And AIGAC, for all of you to know, stands for the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, better known as AIGAC. I think several of you have been on the show before, but maybe Paulo, this is your first time. So welcome especially to you. Yeah, so let's just call out the elephant in the room. What the heck is AIGAC anyway? Who would like to start us off? Either Candy or Paulo, you've been in the organization the longest. Maybe you'd like to take the lead.
And I was going to say, Krithika is a past president, so we're all very, very involved. I mean, I can start off as it's, as you said, it's the AIGAC, Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, correct? So it's an association of people around the world that help people apply to graduate programs. While most of our members do MBA admissions, we also have people doing all sorts of, medical school or law school, that sort of stuff. And it was basically an organization that was created to help promote the industry, to teach each other, to promote training, to build ethics, to build connections. And that was 20 years ago, I think?
Just about.
Right.
Yeah. Paulo's been around that long. I think you joined before me. I think I met you at the second conference, maybe.
Right. Yes. The whole industry of consulting services, especially here for we're focused on the graduate admissions, and most of us focused on MBA. The process has really gotten competitive. Schools are requiring more and more from the applicants. Mm-hmm. So the industry was born with the need to have that somewhat, a clear understanding of what we do, and what we do with the candidates in terms of helping them, how much help can we provide the candidates, and especially the institution lines up all with the schools. So we meet on a yearly basis with all the schools, with the director of admissions and the staff to get, ideas and points and leads and really to understand what they're looking for in the candidates. And we work as consultants to help candidates line up their stories with the schools and to see fit and all that. So back then, 20 years ago, it was a smaller pool of applicants, but now things have got really, really competitive. And the schools, they really love interacting with us, giving us really a greater understanding, a deeper understanding of their programs, so we can go and help students when they're researching for the schools to line up with their schools. So it's been an incredible journey. The industry has grown tremendously, and the schools, interact with the schools has been awesome on a yearly basis. So we see what's coming up, in their curriculum, admissions process, change of essays, challenges with AI and all that. So it's been a lot of fun, actually.
Paulo, and before Bara jumps in with the next question, I just want to comment, as this is your first time on the show, you had a guy on in December, I believe. He's an alum from the Wharton MBA, but he spoke about his journey applying for both Harvard and Wharton. He had a lot of contacts at both, and he was telling us that he's talked to a lot of people. He has his own YouTube channel, so he's pretty active on the interwebs, and he polled a lot of people at both schools, and he says at least 40% of people that he's talked to have admitted to using admissions consultants. So when you're looking at these top schools, even though a lot of people don't want to talk about it, having had help, which I think is a bit of a paradox, because we all talk about the benefits of coaching and mentorship and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's no shame in that, leveraging your resources. That's what we do in business anyway. And so when you think about how many people have elicited some sort of kind of support, the odds become even more challenging. And one of the great things that I like about AIGAC is that we serve as a sort of megaphone for the schools to get the right information to applicants. We stay in the know. We have great, close personal relationships with these admissions directors and so forth, so we can transmit really good, up-to-date information that's really helpful for our clients.
Absolutely. If I may just jump in, I remember applying to graduate school in the US many years ago. I'm from Brazil, grew up in Sao Paulo all my life. So we had no help here. Where to go to, regarding the application details and the essays we needed to produce. And I needed somebody to just give me feedback on what I wrote, and we had nobody. So I applied, and fortunately I was accepted and got a scholarship. But then we see the competitiveness of those schools, and applicants, they want feedback. They want people to guide them in the process. And what we're doing is guiding them so they could bring forth their best, their profile and all that. So the industry becomes really in a time of need, where applicants need feedback to be able to position themselves, well and competitively in the process. So,
and it wasn't always that the schools were communicating with the admissions folks, with the admissions consultants, right? So it's really the cultivating trust over many years of the people who are working at the schools and communicating with our cohort, because things go to print, but things can change, right? And so being able to speak to people the last minute, up to date, and really be able to also tell them what students are struggling with, right? And like what are the issues that so really it's this reciprocal relationship, which I think is really powerful. I mean, I don't have that same role, but I know that when I have clients talking to them about AIGAC and an AIGAC vetted admissions person. So let's just kind of get into the weeds here. What does an AIGAC admissions consultant provide for the applicant, and how do they give value?
I can hop in here. And Bara, I think that's a great point about, those relationships with the admissions directors, because I'm probably the newest member among this group. I joined last year, right before the New York conference. And it's been super valuable for me, not only to elevate my practice with, alongside all of you, but also become better informed about these programs. And admissions directors are great marketers for their programs, but they need conduits like us to help filter that information to candidates. So we're at the beginning, we're just at the tail end of, round 3, 4, depending on the program, for the last application season, and we're already starting a new season. So what does that look like? We are meeting with new clients, helping to understand what their career goals are, helping to refine them, helping to point them to the right programs that might be a fit for their career goals. And then, working out their strategy from there. Some are taking tests still, and some are beyond that. And we are waiting for those applications to come out in the next couple of months to guide them through the actual tactics of the process. So we're deep in strategy right now to kind of answer that question of some of the things that we're involved with as admissions consultants.
Yeah. I think I wanted to add on to that, because I think, Bara, you're asking, what does it look like working with an AIGAC admissions consultant? Because, I think, we know what admissions consultants do, but when you have an AIGAC admissions consultant, that means that we have this network, this organization that's been around 20 years. We have dozens of colleagues across the world to tap into. We have these annual conferences we go to. We have a series on our, on our private internal website called Summer with the Schools, where we sit down and have one-on-one interviews with different admissions directors. We also have ethics, we have guidelines. So if you're working with an AIGAC consultant, you're working with someone who's extremely knowledgeable, who's always upskilling and learning, who knows about the industry, who's committed to the ethics of the industry, and who's going to be very committed to the work. So it's a sort of a guarantee that you're going to get a certain type of ethical and knowledgeable applicant, or I'm sorry, consultant.
Right. Yes, and if I could add, and just a point here on Bara, yeah, schools weren't always favorable when you look at consultants. I remember the Tuck School of Business was the first school that actually opened up their grounds 23 years ago. They actually invited several consultants from all over the world to visit their schools. And then for 3 years in a row, they got consultants, and then consultants talking in the first meeting. We had some like Ricardo from Brazil and some other people from all over the world. This is where the idea of AIGAC was born there. But that was the first school that saw how it could be of value to them to help students in their application process. So I have applicants from Brazil. They come to me and they said, Paulo, I look at top 10 schools. I looked at M7, and I have a pretty good, somewhat of a good idea of what the schools require, but where do I actually fit in terms of schools, And this is where we go in, and because of our, resources that we have with the schools and other colleagues, we're able to sit with the student and have an in-depth conversation about their profile, their aspirations, and really understand their cultural background, and where they would fit. And what students enjoy the most in the first few conversations is really, okay, so yeah, I point them to a certain school, to Kellogg or to Berkeley, and I mention some reasons, and they go on and research and confirm. But they appreciate the guidance of matching, so they won't waste a lot of time applying to schools that they ended up not really enjoying afterwards. So great value here in terms of helping students channel their efforts to schools that they have a lot to do, they have a lot in common, and then navigate the whole process with them from the brainstorming into the essays and recommendation. And Candy mentioned a very important part of the process here, being very ethical. How far can we go in terms of advising students? We'll guide them through the process, but there's a limit of how much you will guide, or we won't do anybody's process. They have to develop their essays themselves. But there's a very important ethical ground that we have to work with, so students are presented on a fair way, because they're supposed to do so.
Yeah, I would like to add here that admissions consultants actually help you to do the work that you need to do to get into business school. And one of the things that has changed over the years is so many programs, the flagship programs, have siblings now. It's like as if just like your new versions of the phone every year, we have new programs coming in every year, which could still probably help someone get onto the career path that they need to get onto. And so in that changing landscape of both jobs and industries and other things, you really would need guides to help you navigate this path, which is also very competitive, very, very competitive. Because even somebody, I'm sure this is probably something that you'll all agree to, somebody 5 years ago may not get into the same school, when they apply in this round or something. So that brings me to the next question in terms of how can students tap into the resources that AIGAC can offer them?
Hire an AIGAC consultant.
Right.
Of course, you can also go to our website, aigac.org, where there's a section called Resources for Applicants, and I believe there's quite a bit of information there, along with a listing of all of our members. Not sure what else is up there. I haven't looked at the website. So right now I'm very involved in the conference, along with Eric and Laura. We're actually planning, and Paula, we're planning our 2024 conference, which is one of the big things we bring to our applicants, is that every year we have these giant conferences at a top school. Last year it was at Columbia. This year we're at ESA in Barcelona, where 25 top admissions directors come, and we have a whole day of a couple days of seminars. So yeah, I've been doing that. I haven't really looked at the website yet. What else is up on the website?
Carrie, I have to remind you. Do you remember the?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So sorry. Yeah, thanks. I had to remind you, Candy. Do you remember the letter of recommendation advice that was put together by a certain someone?
Yeah, I think that is still up there. We do have a document. Oh, that's true. We have a document on there that was called like how to like, I think it's a document for recommenders, like how to do a letter of recommendation. And it's in several languages. It's in English and French and Spanish. It's in different languages, so that if you're asking a recommender, if you don't work in consulting or place where MBAs are known, and your recommender's like, what's a letter of recommendation? You can be like, here's your AIGAC guide. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Starting with the basic here, I remember Graham, the founder of Clear Admit, many years ago. He's one of the leaders in the industry. And he said, writers need feedback, starting with the basic, right? When you write something, you write your resume, and you write your first draft of an essay, and you're looking around, you give it to your parents or to your friends. No, you want somebody that understands the industry, understands the profile of the schools, understand what they're looking for. So starting with the basics there, we are somebody that will not only lead you into brainstorming to producing a narrative that is totally lined up and consistent with your portfolio, but we are there to give you feedback on how to best, express yourself in that and that essay to be able to present yourself to the schools. And because we meet with the schools regularly, yearly, and we know what they're expecting, what they're looking for, what are their values. I believe we can do a very good job here in giving you the feedback that you need to be able to line you up with the school's expectations. So it's a fun game. Students end up. I remember telling a student, you really should consider Chicago, because when I see your appreciation for academics and I see your level of maturity there. Oh, Chicago, that's such a serious school. I've never thought about applying to Chicago. Guess what? That's where they end up going. And they, Paulo, thank you so much, because I never saw that I had the potential to go to Chicago or the fit to go to Chicago. And after 6 months, I got admitted to 3 schools and I'm going to Chicago. So thank you so much for the input I gave in the first few brainstormings we had. So that's the kind of exposure you're going to have with one of us.
That's so true, Paulo. You mentioned Chicago, and I remember when we visited Chicago booth, and we were talking about the different divisions they have, like the Russ Dandy Center for Social Innovation. And I don't know how many clients have said, like, well, Chicago, that's all about finance. And I'm like, oh, no. I have been to the Russ Dandy Center of Social Impact. And so you're right. We're able to give this feedback because we know the audience, so we know when you're applying, what admissions is actually looking for and what they actually have to offer. So I think all of us really can say, how many of you have steered a client to a school they never heard of and now they're attending?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, that's the kind of personalized advice and conversation you can have with a consultant that you can't get from general information online. Yes, there's plenty of information on the internet, but when you connect with a consultant who understands your goals, your objectives, what you want in an MBA program, these conversations can get to the heart of what you're looking for and steer you in places that you might not have thought of otherwise, like Chicago for something non-finance related.
Right. And I think I just want to point it out that it works both ways. The schools, they really ask us a lot of things. I remember going to Harvard for the first time. Harvard was one of the last schools that opened up for us because they were very reluctant to have consultants help you. And they finally recognized that we do a fair job, in Harvard asking us several questions about, the whole process. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, was initiated by one of AIGAC members telling the schools that they should really have one common letter of recommendation instead of having several types of letters of recommendation. And what we have today, it's not ideal. It's not totally, we haven't closed the loop yet, but totally. But, most schools use the same type of letter, which makes the work for recommenders a lot better. So, and AIGAC was behind that somehow.
I think that was following the famous Wharton conference, the conference at Wharton. That was a very big discussion about letters of recommendation. And that was where it kind of came up, like how hard it is for recommenders to do 6 recommendations for 6 schools. And every single one was completely and totally different. So yeah, definitely AIGAC had a voice in helping that change.
Yes.
GMAC executed, though, of course.
That's right. Yes.
What's really interesting is somebody who's come into this organization relatively recently. Laura's probably the newest. I'm maybe the second newest. This will be my third conference this May. And to see how the organization has evolved, and there's this very mutual benefit on both sides, and how the influence that we in our position can have in improving the experience for the applicant and for the admissions part. But just to hammer down on the point that I think is so important about it being very much about a personal touch. As Laura was saying, there is a ton of information on the internet. I mean, that is the problem of this day and age, right? We're saturated with fake news and with differing opinions. And I think perhaps the blogs are the worst place to go, because you have ideas and opinions and theories that are sometimes wild. Some of the things that I've read on there, I'm like, no way. And what you can get from a consultant is that personal touch. You're not going to get feedback on your essays, on your story, and you have to figure out a way to stand out and to be authentic, to really fit in. You have to resonate with that school's values, mission statement, culture, and so forth. I feel like the things that get the biggest attention, the spotlight, are like GMAT, scholarships, and rankings. And these things have their place in this universe. But the GMAT, I feel like, is just that, although there is no minimum score, it is sort of a minimum requirement to prove that you can handle the work, that you're admissible. But what gets you accepted is your story and how you fit in with the community of the schools to which you're applying. And so this is, I think, where we really can benefit our clients, in the sense of how well we know the schools, how up to date we are. We understand what they're looking for, and how to ask the right questions to tease out some of the best aspects of your story, your career, your personality, your whatever, that are going to make that match happen. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if you guys have comments to add to that.
I would completely agree. And with so many schools out there, one of the easy resources that is available for applicants is the school profiles on the resources page. And that's a really easy way for someone to just go and have a quick glance and figure out how Tepper would be different than a Ross, or how Harvard is different than a Wharton, and whether a Kellogg 1 year or a Kellogg 2 year would be better for them, based on the quick things that are available. And I had to add that one of the biggest things, as all of you pointed out, is not just nudging the folks towards the right schools, but actually preparing them for those schools. And in help of the mindset change that needs to happen for them, especially when they had to think that this was never on my radar. I never thought that it was a good school, but then the whole mindset change that happens, and the preparation that goes behind, and it's not like they're just accepting or resigning themselves to a fate of going to a school they didn't consider, but they wholeheartedly in embracing that option that they have and actually enjoying the process. I feel that that's where admissions consultants can, really help applicants.
Right. Absolutely. I like the personal touch you mentioned, Eric. I think I used to say that way back, that the whole application process is a science and it's an art at the same time. And, a science because you need to have graduated so many years of experience, and then several details that I can list about you. But then there's the art, the personal touch of understanding your aspirations, where you want to go. Okay, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have to write it. Okay, that's fair enough. So let's talk about it. So the AIGAC consultant will jump in and work with you in your aspirations. And it is a life-changing move that you're making that's going to impact the rest of your life. The longevity of your career, all the way to when you're 60, will depend on this very same move. So we're going to be with you, understand you, and guide you into the whole process. And students appreciate the emotional support that we provide, because all the applicants, they are first-time travelers, right? And they have no idea. So what's happening? They have some idea, but no idea. And guiding them through the whole process. I know where you need to get at the end of the process when you're applying. So I'm going to guide you through the process with, as less stress possible here. But they appreciate the guidance, the emotional support, and the ability to fit them into into the right schools. So it's interesting, and they all become a lifetime friends, right? I've been to the wedding of several of my clients here in Sao Paulo throughout the years, and then when they travel, they have children, they send me their pictures and all that, and it's been very interesting. So.
Paulo, I'm glad you bring up the art and science of this process, because unlike, medical school, law school, there's a lot more subjectivity in the process of evaluating MBA candidates, and getting our clients to understand that, I think, is paramount. And that's where the essays and the personal narrative make a huge difference in differentiating one's candidacy. As Eric said, test scores, GPA, things like that they're a hurdle. They're, table stakes for just, being in consideration for the process, but all of the, nuanced storytelling and, other aspects of a candidacy are what, really help to set that person apart. And that's where the real art comes in.
Right. Through the years, I have evaluated candidates that had applied in the previous year and they weren't accepted. Okay. And I look at their profile, and unfortunately, I can see there that they haven't maximized, and the person that worked with them or they worked by themselves, they were not able to get that art going, right? If they had lined up their expectations differently, and some of their positionings were superficial, they were not really connecting all their dots of their lives, which is the famous Stanford, have you connected the dots of your life well? Yeah. When you do so, you gain power, you gain synergy here in the process. You position yourself in a different way. So I meet with students that they haven't done a good job, and that's why they didn't get in. But if they had somebody guiding them, they would have gotten a different result. This is where I believe that a consultant would add, an immense value to you in terms of admissions. So,
and getting back to the AIGAC side of it, because we invest so much time getting to understand the schools and knowing the schools, it's not just helping them to tell their story, but helping them to remember, if you're applying to Kellogg, if you're applying to Berkeley, if you're applying to INSEAD, there are some touchstones that you should be covering that these schools truly and deeply care about. And you want to make sure that's coming out as well in your stories and essays. Because what you might say to INSEAD might be very different from what you say to Harvard. And not that they're different stories, they're still you, they're different aspects of you, and you're just showing different sides to show your fit with the different programs.
Guys, thank you for all your comments. I gotta bring up a topic now that is it's really in the news. Everyone's talking about it. It's AI, right? Artificial intelligence, things like ChatGPT, DALL-E 2, all that kind of stuff. And I just want to bring up to get us started on this topic. Last June, when we had the conference hosted at Columbia, this was a topic that we dove into. And I remember our friend Sherry from Duke, she was one of the first ones to stand up and say, well, you heard me say it first. We encourage you to use AI in your admissions essays. But for her, AI stood for authentic individuality. And she made it clear it can't be a copy-paste job, right? So just to introduce the topic, in the face of AI, or with this tool available to you, does one still need an admissions consultant?
Yeah, I think I just want to say that I don't think she said we encourage you, but I think it was more like it's like it's like any other tool out there. It's fine if you use it. So I want to put everyone go like, oh, I'm applying to Duke, I better use AI.
This is not a direct quote. Thank you for clarifying, Candy.
Cool. Yeah. So I think we'll have to see. It's still early days right now. I've been getting, essays from people where I'm like, what is this? This is a crazy word mishmash. What? And I write them like, did you use AI? They're like, oh yeah, I used it. I'm like, obviously. So I don't think it's quite there yet. Maybe you can get structure from it. Like, okay, give me a 500-word structure with this, an opening and 2 paragraphs and a closing. But I'm not sure if it can write your authentic story for you yet. Like, are an authors going to be using this? Or Anne Lamott, is she going to start using AI instead of writing her book? I don't think we're at the authenticity level yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's this detail of storytelling that you need to know the person in depth to be able to lead him or her into putting forward her best or her best self, and AI can do so. Or maybe if you feed your whole life into AI, or if there's all the details of your life, but you need the kind of level and depth that you need in a Stanford, Harvard, Chicago essay, the AI won't do it. And I have a lot of Brazilians using AI, and here in Brazil it's very clear. All of a sudden the writing became very floral, became very erudite. What are those words? We don't even use that in English. They put it in Portuguese and all those words. What is that? So it was so artificial, and worse yet, so superficial. So the only thing that they have used AI for legitimately, I see maybe there's potential, and I see recommenders, instead of paying somebody to translate the letters, they use AI to translate. I've seen translation of letters by recommenders, and that was pretty interesting. I think was a fair translation of that. So I see maybe there's a way there that you could maybe channel that. I think as with any tool, there will be some benefits of that, but I don't see it substituting a one-to-one in-depth talk about what you want to do with your life. Maybe after I'm gone, maybe there'll be, maybe there's somebody has rose to that level, but not right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's there yet, but it's coming. The level of personalization that you need to tell an authentic story. You guys are absolutely right. The tools aren't there yet to, capture the nuance of someone's stories, relate that to the target program, and, be successful. Right. But I do think that is down the road. And I think it'll be really interesting to see then how the admissions process evolves. Right. Right now we're depending a lot on the written word, through the resume, the essays, et cetera. But a lot of the curriculums are taking note. Wharton, for example, has a policy where a professor can determine whether he or she wants to incorporate AI, what their policy is, and we're seeing some interesting things come out of that. Read a recent article about HBS and that too. So we'll see. Right now personalization's not there. We think we think it's a good tool for the next cycle, but obviously the candidate has to put his or her personal touch on it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm really curious to see how this admissions process evolves itself. Will there be more video, more spontaneous communication? How will admissions teams react when they're seeing a little too much of more of the same, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think AIGAC will be right there, because at the conference this year, Paulo, who's in charge of curriculum, there's going to be a session about innovate or disrupting the admissions process, right?
Right. Yes. We think there's room with all that happening. So many changes, right? GMAT went very, very small. All of it, and TOEFL changed, GRE changed. Everything's changing in the process. Like we all know, the pandemic accelerated all the changes. And I think the next big change would be essays. Are they going to be essays? Are they going to be video essays? Maybe somebody's going to. One of the essays is to have your best friend at work record you doing 5 minutes in a meeting without you knowing, and send it to the school for evaluation. So we're trying to come up with disruptive ideas so schools would open up the field in terms of there are some skills we need to better evaluate. Look the data insights on GMAT. I think there was a phenomenal change they brought into data insights, by the way, because Philadelphia has an arm on test prep, and I'm one of the teachers. So data insights was a very intelligent move to be able to analyze graphics and all that. We needed that big time, right? And I think people are not doing well on so it's one of the sections of GMAT you can still miss a lot of questions and do your 83, 84 score there out of 90, because everybody's missing a lot of questions. But it's such a great move. And I see the schools are up. We are right here on the brink of a major change in essays. I want to see what it is. Of course, the schools never do drastic changes because they need to do a progressive change. So the pool of candidates that have been analyzing the essays year to year don't have this drastic thing to work against. but I think it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen. So maybe recommenders, instead of writing a letter, they're going to send it a 5-minute recording. They can send it in Portuguese because AI will translate to English. And that will be the recommendation letter. What's going to happen, right? So I don't know, just ideas. But let's see what's going to be.
Very interesting. You
I
guys
love
talked
that.
about AI not being really there yet, and if we imagine, okay, you can plug into ChatGPT, write me the perfect, Harvard MBA admissions essay, and maybe one day the software will be there to also scan through your LinkedIn and your CV and incorporate your work history, and that'll be there. But how will it know about your values? How will it know about your goals? Like, you can't see the future yet. I hope never. But yeah, really interesting how the rethink on the essays. Already we have that company that's been around for a number of years, Kira Talent, that has these sort of video essays that a lot of schools have adopted. And I think it's smart because it's more authentic, more in the moment and so on. But that idea about having a colleague record you while you're running a meeting is wild too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even with Kira Talent, think about, we're always wondering, will admissions consultants disappear with the onset of AI? And I don't think they will, because you still need to know who you are and what you bring to a program and how to choose a program. And even if it's, whatever the future, essay replacement will be, how to execute it well. You'll still, and even with Kira Talent, it's not like, people are just like, oh, what is it? Let me log in. No, they're prepping. They're like practicing questions, it's still.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time prepping them for interviews and those spontaneous conversations.
Yeah.
Prepping for spontaneity.
Oh yeah. And students appreciate the support, right? And I think when I start working with a person, we have all the professionalism, of course, that we need to have, but there's the bonds that we create. We're giving you the support for the most important plan of your life, and here I am, all ears for you. So I have, I talk to students on Skype. I know Skype is very old, but I love Skype. And I tell my clients, you can send me a message on Skype at any time. You wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, desperate about if you're gonna get approved at Wharton. Express your feelings right on Skype. I'm gonna see when I wake up. Don't worry about sending the message. And they love that. I can talk to Paul at any time. Just all I want to do is just give you my feelings right now, because I'm feeling insecure. And yes, and we, from the other hand, we know exactly what to say, right? Okay, calm down. Your essays are becoming great. Love the way you position yourself to Kellogg. Kellogg is gonna really appreciate your application. That kind of support, I don't think AI can do. So maybe not.
So true. I always say that it's an art and a science, but there's also a huge emotional component of applying. Everything from believing yourself, like, oh, can I apply to Harvard? Am I even worthy of this? To, dealing with, oh, how do I answer this essay? Or I'm not good enough, or I'm not a one-armed refugee who built a $1 billion startup. And so there's a lot of insecurities that I think we help. I do the same thing, Paul. I don't use Skype, I use WhatsApp, but the same thing, people be like just sending like messages all the time to deal with like sort of that emotional aspect. Yeah. I mean, there is AI generated counselors and therapy. I don't know how accurate they are, but maybe hard to replace at the moment, at least. So
yeah.
And I used to tell my clients when they hire me, I said, okay, it's not a pay and get service. No, it's a partnership we're building together. I'm availing of my time, and you trusting in me. So it's a partnership together. And as the Travis used to say, right, the best feeling is that at the end of the partnership, they get approved into Kellogg and they call their parents or their significant other. Next thing, they call us, to tell us, I've been admitted,
second behind mom.
So phenomenal. So.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching, keep that in mind. Like this is a partnership that can extend beyond just the few months that you're working on your MBA application. For example, I reviewed a resume last night of a candidate I worked with 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool to see her career progression, through MBA, post MBA, and, keep that relationship going. And, that's really rewarding for me to see. But another tip along those lines is to think about, what is that rapport you build in those initial conversations with your MBA consultant? And does that person believe in you and your candidacy? You've got to work with someone who believes in what you're doing, what you're trying to do, and can steer you in the right direction.
Right, right. And you need somebody to be truthful with you. You know, I talked to a candidate this week, and then he attended a university in Brazil that is a very it's not a strong university. It's not, and but he was able to make a big jump into a great company. Okay, so it is critical that he gets a good GMAT. So I told him, you know, you graduated from a school that everybody gets in, everybody gets out. There's no challenge, and we need to work on that GMAT hard. And
Yeah.
he said, and thank you for being truthful. He said, nobody, I talked to other, nobody told me that. I said, well, it's the first thing that stands on your curriculum, the name of the university. Nobody knows that, right? I know what that is because I've been around for a while, but we need to work on your GMAT. You know, you were not given the opportunity to go to good school, but you made a great jump into a professional life. Let's prove them that, you know, when you talk about intellectual development, cognitive ability, you're good. So, you know, invest money in your GMAT. Don't hesitate. And he appreciated, you know, the honest feedback on this and other things as well. So that's what we're there for. So
You're bringing up some really good points about the different parts of yourselves that you need to present to students. You know, the sort of counselor, friend, expert in schools. You know, and it really talks about like the art and the science of all of this. And I think it would be great for our listeners to hear, you know, what are some ways that you keep up to date or you keep your skills sharp and bring in more knowledge and skills in addition to what you've said, like the conferences and talking with the schools? Are there other ways that you stay, you know, relevant and up to date? Yes. Right.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are there some ways that your clients are surprised that you've done a course or you've done some workshop that they're surprised about?
Yeah, it's hard to say because I think, I don't remember, we were talking about this today in our little group. I was talking about it earlier in another group. There's so much information out there. It's just like there's a content overload. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to go up to date by like scanning through, you know, the web or reading this particular website, that website. It's not always the best place to get information all the time. There's a lot of skewed stuff. And I don't necessarily take any course with that, but what I find extremely valuable, and this is also getting back part of AIGAC, is I've got these colleagues around the world. So when I don't know something, I pop into one of my WhatsApp group and I've got 50 or 60 admissions consultants, you know, in Japan, in Brazil, in Peru. Guys, this thing happened. Who knows this? Or has anyone ever heard of a program that specializes in that? And it's just it's amazing the stuff we learn from each other. So I think this kind of like network we have is one of the most powerful ways that I at least stay up to date.
No, absolutely. I think, you know, coming from the standpoint that we've been meeting with the schools for several years, you know, now, we have a very good basis to grow upon. We know the culture of the schools and we know the expectations. So there's a core knowledge that we carry that is a vital part of our work. And of course, every year, we need to be really, I study the curriculum of the schools. What are some of the new programs that have come up? What are some of the tendencies here in terms of leads of new programs? What are the best professors that are, you know, actually excelling in the past 2 years? And so it's a matter of research, but nothing really substitutes the sharing of knowledge and experience that we have. So I remember coming up on the conference, how do you deal with somebody that has been abused? Can I bring the abuse into the essay or not? So that's, you know, a critical question for maybe somebody. I remember we discussed that openly, you know, from the standpoint of the school, you know, what are you expecting, you know, and from the standpoint. So, you know, having a network of consultants all over the world is priceless. And if you haven't gone through, you know, if you don't know that, how to deal with that, somebody has gone through that. So, and a lot of experienced people at AIGAC. So that's incredible.
Yeah, it's also the way that I see it is that there are lots of admissions consultants out there, but they're not all members of AIGAC. And you might have organizations that we do have organizations who are members, but there's organizations that aren't. And so there's vetting, there's integrity, there's ethics, there's things that really create not just the community and the brain trust, but really make sure that if there's someone an admissions consultant writing essays for you, they're not going to be a member of AIGAC.
They're not. They're not. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I think what stands out in AIGAC is the relationship with the schools. I don't think any other institution has developed such a trusting relationship with the schools. The schools, they trust us. That's why they have us over, at MIT or yes, and now Cal. They trust us. They want us have us on campus. They want to talk to us, give us a lot of very important inside information about the process, and they trust us. They know we're not going to be writing essays. We're not going to be writing recommendation letters. The students that come to us, they present themselves ethically, as they're supposed to, because they signed that in the application. So, and we brief students about all that in the beginning.
I think that, so what we're talking about now, maybe the people listening might not understand, because what does it mean when we say vetting? And maybe Eric, like you and I just went through this because we're also on the board. Like, you can't just become a member of AIGAC. You can't just send your check. Like, Eric, do you want to explain a little bit, like, what is the vetting process?
Sure. If a consultant, whether as an individual or part of an agency, wants to become a member of AIGAC, there's an application they have to complete. And then there's certain members of the board who go through this application and check references and check their work history. They have to have worked as a consultant for a certain number of years and supported a certain number of people in their MBA journey. And we take this very seriously. We want to make sure that we're not welcoming the wrong people in the organization, the people who do adhere to the same code of ethics, that aren't doing the things that were of concern a couple of decades ago before AIGAC started, that consultants were just writing essays for people or procuring artificial references. No. And that they're going to contribute positively to the organization. So I think that I and Laura and some of the newer people benefit from the work that's been done by the people who've created this organization, which is built on a relationship of transparency, trust, and professionalism. So
I can speak a little bit also, because I've been on membership for many years, which is not part of the board, but we're a separate committee, and we go through everything. There's two of us that look at every application. So in addition to going through the board, then coming to us, then we actually check, social media, website, we do lots of searches, we connect the dots. So it's a pretty involved process, and it's not just one person, but two. And then we'll sometimes talk about it as a group, and then it goes back to the board. So it's actually it's like a multiple sieve process that someone will learn about the candidate that's coming into the organization.
Yeah, that's a great process in terms of having, having the people that we can count on as part of AIGAC. One thing that I want to point out too is that through the years, we have had several questions about how to deal with stuff. And as a member of AIGAC here, you have direct access to the schools. You can call the director of admissions and ask questions. I remember when I came across many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, my first student that had a stuttering problem. And how do we present that stuttering challenge in an interview? Should we call admissions before and tell this guy stutters and how to deal with that? It was my first case. We had no clue on how to do that. So I called the school in question, and the school had, a very transparent and very helpful way to deal with that. And the guy was admitted to the school, interviewed. It was a top school. He was admitted, interviewed. He was admitted. But having that direct access on dealing with some challenges that we see here and there, it's one of the benefits of having us on board.
So before we wrap up today, because we are running out of time, unfortunately, big surprise, the six of us know how to talk. Just wanted to address a couple of myths and debunk them before we wrap up, just to have a little parting gift for our audience today. So myth number one, admissions consultants only help with applications. Who wants to tackle that quick?
False. Is this a true or false game? Sorry, false.
Or more than one word answers.
Now, as I said earlier, we're helping with the strategy. I have talked people out of applying for business school depending on what their goals were, right? Ooh. So like it can even be that extreme. But as I mentioned earlier too, like, I'm working with a candidate 7 years out too. So, there is quite a bit of like positioning and strategy that comes along with this role, in addition to career counseling and some of the benefits you might not see right away. It's not just an essay editing service, although that is something that we do. There is a whole other set of related activities that feed into those application components.
Definitely. All right, myth number 2. So working with a consultant will guarantee being admitted and getting a scholarship.
The direct way to get into jail, I think.
That's it. I have a very simple answer when people say, like, can you guarantee me that I'll get into Harvard? I'm like, if I could guarantee you that, I'd be charging 6 figures. What do you think? Like, no one can guarantee that. I can guarantee that we can improve your odds. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I like the way you put it. Absolutely. Yeah, students. I remember one client of mine early in my practice. They said, "Paulo, you should add a success fee based on the scholarship. Give like 1-2% is yours, and students are going to have to pay you." I said, "No way. I don't work like that." But it got me thinking, right? Because some students got sizable scholarships, but and one of the clients early in the game, he said, "Paulo, why should I hire you? In the process in terms of being admitted. How can you guarantee my admissions?" And I said, "I cannot guarantee anybody's admission, but no other consultant will pull out of you your best self as I will do. And that's guaranteed. It's going to be the best self. And then let's see who wants you there. But, this is what we do. We get your best self presented to the school. I can guarantee that."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Eric.
For some reason.
Sorry about
There
that.
you go.
Last one, myth number 3. Admissions consultants are prohibitively expensive.
Not if you get a giant scholarship. It's not.
No, I don't think so.
It's expensive compared to some things, but look at the return on investment if you get accepted to a top school. The scholarships, the opportunities.
Absolutely.
You think it's expensive? That's a good question.
Yeah. I normally tell students, see how much you're going to be spending. Have you done any budgeting at all? How much you're going to be spending, to go to the US or Europe to study, plus all the application fees and all that, and see how much you're paying me, to really make your dream viable. It's nothing, right? Nothing. The point of sale, right? But I mean, the value that we add, I think, is really, it gives them a peace of mind. They're comfortable. I've done my best here, so they're not expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're probably the only industry which sacrifices all New Year holidays, Christmas holidays, and everything at the altar every single year.
Yeah, second round. Let me tell you, every year I ask myself, should I keep working with second round? Yes, because students get approved. We have results in second round. So how can I give that up? But yeah, it takes Christmas and New Year's away from us.
Always.
We got a question before, just in the nick of time. Kevin, thanks for asking. Can an admissions consultant provide support in understanding which schools I should apply to?
Absolutely. That's why. Yeah,
Exactly. Really.
A lot of applicants come to us because of that. Mainly, instead of shooting everywhere, what are my chances in what schools, and we will be able to assess that technically, well, in a technical way here for you.
And in an efficient way, because of the years that we've been doing this and the knowledge that we bring. Yeah, absolutely. It can save a lot of time. I mean, I love Candy's tagline, taking the misery and mystery out of admission.
You don't have to spend hours and hours pulling out your hair. I have all the answers already.
Absolutely.
All of you, all of my AIGAC members.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys, I think we got to wrap it today. This was a great episode. Thank you for all of your insight and your time and humor. If you guys like this episode, give us a thumbs up, or don't forget to subscribe to MBA Waves on our YouTube channel to stay on top of more info, meet with schools, and learn the latest and greatest of business school. And to check out next week's episode, go to mbawaves.com. Thank you to all of our guests, Candy, Paulo, and Laura. Thank you, Krithika and Bara. And thank you to everyone in the audience. See you next time at MBA Waves. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.